Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast, where we talk all things Commander. And this week, we're going to talk about expensive cards not worth their price. So we have cobbled together a list of cards, $20 plus in that range, some a lot more than $20, some around that range. And we're going to put forth arguments as to why we think they're not worth the price. Maybe suggest alternatives or maybe reasons why we don't think they're worth the price. But of course, everyone's budget is different. So some people, any card is not worth the price. So take that with a grain of salt. But we're just going to try to talk about the general casual power level and reasonable budgets. But yeah, so join with me today is Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Ready to talk some Magic Finance stuff.
MTG Finance cast now, yes, pretty much.
Tomer, Budget Commander, how are you doing?
I'm a little bit peeved on that comment because I remember I always post on Twitter like, oh, here's a random card that I think is good in XYZ deck, and I posted like Spoils of Evil. I just pulled it out of my Toshiro deck, and I was like, this is good for black decks that mill your opponents. That's cool. And then I got DM'd apparently immediately afterwards it was posted on this MTG Finance Reddit, and I'm like, no guys, come on. Come on, stop making bad investments.
All right, the Asian Avenger Krim, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm excited because I do like talking about some of the speculations I've made, especially the bad ones I've made, like Antiquities War. I'm waiting for y'all to spike that for me.
What war?
Yeah, exactly.
The more we mention it, the worse it gets.
yeah. Don't worry. It's really good. Just go buy it. Don't ask.
Ignore everything. And I'm your host, Richard, and I will be guiding you through some expensive cards today. But before we get to that, our show today is brought to you by Card Conduit, the easiest way to sell your Magic card. Card Conduit lets you skip all the typing, time, and work associated with buy listing. Their curated service lets you send in as many cards as you want with buy list value $1 more, and you pay just a 5% service fee. You can use their sorted service where you list and sort your cards and pay only 2%. You get a detailed report and fast payment once your order is processed. You can get 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. So thank you, Card Conduit, for supporting today's show. After you listen to the cast, make your own decisions, ship off those overpriced cards, get some good value. You can use Card Conduit. So we're going to kick things off. I'm going to bring forth, I think this is not controversial. We've talked about it many times. And the first is actually a set of cards. That would be the original Dual Lands, Magic's kind of holy grail here. If you don't know what they are lands that have the basic land types. So they have the type forest and plains if you have a savanna, and they tap for the two colors of mana, green and white, no conditions. So since they've been printed, we've had many variations of this card. The most popular would probably be shock lands. They're the same, but you got to pay 2 life for them to enter untapped. And then we have cards like maybe the Battle Bond lands where they enter untapped if you have 2 or more opponents, but they cannot be fetched up. They don't have the basic land types. Currently, as of 2023, these range from $300 to $700, depending on the color combination. And the general rule is if there's blue in it, it's expensive, right? So these are typically used in CDH, in Vintage, and Legacy. And those are all blue-dominated formats. Is there any world where spending $300 to $700 for a dual land is good value for your deck in Commander?
No.
I mean, it is optimal, right? It is optimal. I think where it's good value is you're like a millionaire and you got way more money than you can ever use. It is going to make your deck that the problem with the dual lands is adding them into your deck over the next land cycle increases your power by a 1% or something. It's a very, very marginal increase. But if you have all the money in the world and you want to make the 100% most optimal deck, then I guess you spend the money and get them. But for everyone else, I would say no. But that would be the one exception I would say is if you have so much disposable income. Yeah.
So Post Malone worth. Everyone else.
Yeah.
Everyone else, no.
So I actually think like obviously I would say never buy these cards. Are too expensive. It's crazy. But like the only time I'm actually feel like, man, I wish I had OG duels in my deck is if I'm in like a 5-color deck, because like the alternative is, let's say you have like 10 fetches and then 10 shock lands, right? And you want to play a fetch, you want to crack it, and you want to get an untapped duel to play something that turn. Losing 3 mana, 1 to crack the fetch, and then 1 to have the shock come into play untapped, does hurt a lot. Lightning bolting yourself like more than once in a game really kind of sucks. It adds up fast. Yeah.
Even in Commander, like in a format.
It matters, but how much does it matter?
My Changeling deck, for example, is 5-color. Like I had 10 shocks, 10 fetches. And if I did that a couple times, it would really suck. If I do that 3 times, that's 9 life loss. It's kind of bad. But like, no, there's no way. I never thought like, oh man, I definitely need to shell out thousands of dollars, take a second mortgage or something, sell my kidney to make sure this deck runs. Like the deck runs fine.
So the standard non dual land mana base, right? That like if you're playing as optimal as you could, would be shock lands, fetch lands, and then triomes if you have many colors, and then a sprinkling of some untapped dual lands, right? So that would be Battle Bond lands. That could be your utility lands like Otowaru, Buseiju, stuff like that. It could be even pain lands or check lands, or the slow lands, right? You have to have 2 or more lands. So, I mean, do you really downgrade that much? I don't think you do. I feel like if I had original duels, like I'd probably win like 1 more game over like the entirety of Commander Clash.
Yeah.
In a game of casual, like I just don't see the need for the untapped mana that, like as bad, right? Like in CDH or something, sure, like it comes in, it's untapped, it's very important there. But like in a game of casual, it just doesn't feel like it's enough. Definitely not $300 to $700 worth of a need. So no. Yeah, like I don't think it's enough of an upgrade. It's like you could actually just build a whole new deck, like on top for one of these duels.
You could build multiple new decks for just like the cheapest one. Like I had like a thing where it's like 50 decks under $50. You could make all of them for less than the cost of getting your Abu Duel cycle. Like it's wild.
And you know what's funny? Even in CDH, even when I played Legacy, like these were not worth it. People like really stress, but like the amount of times you die over 2 life, I would put a caveat over that would be if you're playing Ad Nauseam, right? Yeah. Because that Ad Nauseam, like that extra life is possibly like 4 or 5 cards. But like if you're playing a non Ad Nauseam deck, like that 2 life is actually not that relevant. And yes, you'll lose like some games because of it, but it's not as big. Like people think the game is over if you play Shocklands in Legacy or something, but it's actually like not that bad. But yeah, casual Commander, I think we're all in agreement. We don't need OG duels, right?
What about the financial argument? What about this perspective? I bought my Scalding Tarns for $100. Now they're worth $20 because Wizards reprints them like crazy. If I just saved up and bought a Volcanic Island, my money would still be worth it because they can't ever reprint it. Is there any way you squint hard enough in the arguments like they're safer to buy because Wizards is just going to reprint everything till it's super cheap these days, but they can't because of the reserve list?
What about an investor? Yeah.
What's the counter offer?
Yeah, what's the
counter offer is just like take that money and go to like your accountant or like a fiduciary and be like, hey, I'd like to invest this money into like some safe bonds, you know, like just the safest route, and you're gonna get more value out of it.
I'm pretty sure dual lands have outpaced the stock market or bonds or whatever over the last
this is
couple
not
decades.
Financial advice disclaimer. I mean, there's some merit to that, but think
I'm
of the
curious about
cost,
that argument,
right? Rather than tying up $300 in a scrub land, that's like a brand new Commander deck, right? Isn't that worth something? Like we're playing to have fun for the most part. Like if you were actually investing in it, would you sleeve it up? Like what if you get it dented or someone drops their Coke on it?
You'd be the guy. Right? You'd be the guy who has it in the binder, or like has it in like the big, like the big. I forget what it's called, the plastic thing, top loader. You'd have like a stack of top loaders. Maybe you'd bring it in like a impenetrable cube. And you'd be like, oh, I proxied it, obviously, but it's right over here.
I mean, I don't think it's a good argument, but I want to bring it up because I think it is like the reserve list does play into that, just like the safety as far as card values. I think the other thing we didn't mention is like, these are probably the literal best cards in all of Magic to proxy. Like if you're playing Commander and you do want the power of original duels, these are like the most justifiable proxies because they're so ridiculously expensive. They're never going to get like super cheap because of the reserve list. So if you want to play a Commander game and like you really want the power of an Underground Sea for some reason, most people are going to be accepting of that these days, I would say.
And if you're playing CDH, everybody's decks are proxied anyway. They don't.
Yeah.
That's the only place where you like really want to have these, right? And even like Richard said, like you don't need them, but like, yeah. You want to have the shocks and the duels for your maximum consistency, you know? So
all right, Seth.
Ooh,
we got the reserve list out of the way. Let's get
reserve
to the juicy
list
cards.
Out of here. Okay,
Let's get to the juicy cards. What do you have for us?
All right, we're jumping into the world of Black Tutors here, and I actually cheated a little bit and added 2 cards because the argument's basically the same for both of them. Those cards are Imperial Seal and Grim Tutor. So Imperial Seal, 1 black mana, search your library for a card, shuffle, put it on top, you lose 2 life. Currently around $70. Grim Tutor, 3 mana, search your library for a card, put it in your hand, shuffle your library, you lose 2 life. Currently around $15. It used to be more expensive. So my argument for these cards is actually pretty simple. So in Commander, there's 2 tutors I think are very worth it if you want to be optimal, and that's Vampiric Tutor and Demonic Tutor. Those are both right around $30. The Imperial Seal costs double either of those, and it is definitely worse than either of those. Grim Tutor is less than those by a bit, but is certainly worse than those. My feeling with Black Tutors is I think it's, for me, worth splurging on a Demonic Tutor or a Vampiric Tutor if I want to play a tutor. But if I'm getting to the point where I'm considering Grim Tutor or Imperial Seal, I would rather play a super cheap but almost as good Diabolic Tutor, Diabolic Intent, Witchclaw Talisman. There's a huge list of tutors that are like in the 3 to 4 mana range that are very budget friendly. And I think if you're like in casual Commander, the difference between 3 mana for Grim Tutor and 4 mana for Diabolic Tutor is not super meaningful. And I think the Imperial Seal is just like actively a bad card unless you're some sort of combo deck where you're desperate to play like every single possible tutor to like find your combo pieces. But I think it's like actively not very good. It's sorcery speed and goes on top of your deck. So it's like a Vampiric Tutor that isn't even instant speed, which is a pretty huge downgrade. So I don't think these tutors are ever really worth it.
I mean, counter argument though to the Grim Tutors that what if you're a Fortnite fan?
Okay, if you're trying to play,
there's a Fortnite Grim Tutor.
There is Crack the Vault, yeah, the Fortnite Secret Lair Grim Tutor. So yes, if you're playing a Fortnite deck, there's an exception to every rule. But outside of being the biggest Fortnite fan,
Grim Tutor is interesting because it's actually cheaper than the tutors you mentioned, right? Like the Vampiric. It's $15. I don't find it that egregious, but Imperial Seal is $75, and it's.
So here's the thing with Grim Tutor, though. Let me present this to you, Richard. So you want to play one tutor in your Commander deck. I don't think Grim Tutor is ever the answer. I think you either save up your money and get an actual good tutor like Demonic Tutor or Vampiric Tutor, or you just go budget and you're like, I'm going to spend my money someplace else in my deck, and you get a Diabolic Tutor or something else that's essentially free for that slot.
I like that argument. So there's no point for this middle ground. You might as well go more premium, spend more money on the tutor that's actually best in class and will never be replaced, in the near term.
Or just play the budget option and forget about it. Like, it's hard for me to ever envision wanting a Grim Tutor in my deck.
I feel like it's just exactly worth its price. I don't know. It's literally half the price of Demonic Tutor and Vampiric Tutor. And I agree with Seth too. Like, if you only want to run 2 tutors in your deck, then I think it is worth just saving up the money and getting Vampiric Tutor and Demonic Tutor because they are just way better than Grim Tutor. But I think Grim Tutor is just way better than Diabolic Tutor. So if you want a 3rd tutor, I think it's just worth it. It's literally half the price, and it's like half as good, and it's like way better than Diabolic.
20 times the price of Diabolic Tutor. It might be half of Demonic Tutor, but it's 20 times Diabolic Tutor.
I just won't run Diabolic Tutor. That's like almost like usually whenever you tutor something up, you can't cast it that same turn, and it's just like awkward.
At that,
I cut it for my budget brews.
I wouldn't run Diabolic either unless it was like a flavor thing. Or what's the 5-mana one?
Dark Petition.
Dark Petition. That one at least gives me 3 mana.
That one gives you your
that refunds you 3 mana if you have
Slinger.
spell mastery. That's like actually good.
I actually would
That's
rather
fine.
play that, but I still think that Grim Tutor is solid tutor number 3, right? Like a very, very solid number 3 tutor, and then I'd probably go Dark Petition.
If it was like close to the price of Demonic Tutor, then I'd say, but it's like half. It's like exactly half. Like that's
$15
that seems
though,
about
for
right.
$15 for like the third best tutor in your deck. That's a lot of money to spend on a throwaway slot. I mean, can we at least agree Imperial Seal is never worth it?
Oh
like,
yeah,
is there any
Seal is
reason
so
to ever
fucking
spend
worth it.
$70 on an Imperial Seal?
God, like some CDH decks are typing furiously about it, but like I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, I like that's like. There's also the argument that you don't even need tutors in your deck. You can just save money, right?
Yeah,
like
of course not.
we're playing singleton format. It's more fun to get the randomness, and it is conceivable that you just cut Grim Tutor and put another on theme card in and call it a day. So you don't
I do that quite often.
actually need tutors at all, right? Like it's your deck gets better, but you don't actually need it. Your deck is just as fun without it. So there is an argument to just skip the tutors altogether, Vampiric and Demonic as well.
I'm on that train, obviously.
Yeah.
I usually play
I
one.
mostly don't run. Yeah, I mostly don't run tutors either. But like, you know, if I'm doing some gimmicky thing, like I know Richard loves his gimmicky things, and like you need a tutor to find your gimmick sometimes. Like if you're a Goblin Charbelcher deck or something like that, you got to find the Charbelcher. So like, there's always a.
But
And
it's
if you're like a
2023.
combo,
Sometimes you pay $15 to get got by opposition agent. You know, like like sometimes it's just better to run the random cards. So yeah. I mean,
since I'm prepping for Vegas, I just got my opposition agent ready. I've never put it into a deck before. I'm very excited.
Prepping for what? What are you worried about? All the
I'm
random
not worried for anything.
tutors. Exactly.
that's perfect for Crim Daganti off of your deck. Perfect.
Yeah, then
All right, Tomer, hit us up with an expensive but not worth card.
Okay, this hurts my soul because this card is a casual favorite and it makes it to me and me very happy. But in too many decks, I see it and it's just not worth the price. I think it's Doubling Season. I know, downvote away. Doubling Season. Doubling Season, casual Juggernaut, one of the staples of the format ever since its inception, really. 5 mana, green enchantment. If an effect would create one or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many tokens instead. And if an effect would put one or more counters on a permanent you control, it puts twice that many counters on that permanent instead. And the reason why I don't like it is it's a really cool effect. It's very powerful in the right circumstances, but it's currently $42. And this is, I was tracking the price at the beginning of the year, or it peaked at earlier this year at $100. And then we got back-to-back reprints on it. We got it in Commander Masters, and then the next set afterwards, Wilds of Eldraine, The Enchanting Tales, is the latest reprint. And those back-to-back reprints dropped it down from $100 to $42, and I still think that's still too much money. The reason is because this enchantment comes out very late. It telegraphs to your opponents that it must be dealt with. And a lot of the times, the fact that it's 5 mana, you usually have to like play it and then pass the turn. You really have to have like the next follow-up. If it stays put, it better do something huge for you. And if you're just jamming it, being like, oh, this is Anointed Procession or Parallel Lives number 2, I think that's just not good. I think you really want this to be like in Super Friends, for example, where like, yes, if I drop my next Planeswalker, I'm literally going to win the game to justify its spot. And yeah, that's my big thing with it. It's still $42, and I think it's just not as good as people expect it to be in most situations. In many cases, if you're just using it for tokens, it's just Parallel Lives and Anointed Processions are just better and they're cheaper. Like Parallel Lives is $26.
Mana cost.
Yeah, they're both in cost and mana cost.
Actually,
and
Anointed Procession is more expensive now than Doubling
Oh yeah, because
Season,
it
I
hasn't
think.
been.
Anointed is white.
Yeah, it hasn't been reprinted.
$42 currently.
Yeah. Parallel Lives is 26. Annoying Procession's creeping up. These are just like, people love them. People just love them. But I feel like a lot of the times you're putting a target on your head and it's just not worth it. And it's definitely not worth it for $42. I mean, you're just simply better equivalents.
To me, this is... Oh, go ahead, Krim.
Well, no. Just a quick point on what you're saying, Seth. It's $42 for Anointed Procession, but and then $42 for Doubling Season. But why would you ever play Doubling Season? It's not the goose with multiple heads and eggs. So,
but then you're paying like $1,000 because the weebs love it.
Yeah, the weebs love it. So
that's the anime version.
So Doubling Season is actually double the price to me.
Oh God,
it's funny to me because for me, Doubling Season is the exact kind of expensive card that is worth the price, because I view this as a card that has like a really unique effect. There's one other, the biggest argument for me for it not being worth the price is actually Primal Vigor, which is almost Doubling Season, except it doesn't work with Planeswalkers and it impacts the entire table rather than just you, but it doubles tokens and counters on creatures. That one's down to $5 thanks to Enchanted Tales, but there's really nothing else that does what Doubling Season does. And in the decks that play Doubling Season, isn't it usually like the card you want to draw the most that just lets you do these ridiculous, crazy, super fun things? Like, for me, if I'm going to spend a lot of money, I want to do something pretty like spectacular with the card. And for me, Doubling Season is just a card that like does really spectacular things. So I will pay because there's not a replacement and I want to do really cool things. And Doubling Season does that sometimes.
I'm actually in Tomer's camp here, where I think that this card is actually replaceable in a majority of decks. Anointed Procession, I guess now is more expensive, but this effect outside of a Planeswalker deck, like if it's a token deck, if it's any of that stuff, I'd rather just have Parallel Lives and 1/1 counters. I don't know. I mean, I guess like this is fine, but is it $50 good or $40 good? I don't think it is. Is it really worth?
I'm camp Seth. So there are cards that do half of it. Just like you're like Teferi's Protection overrated, play Fog. You're like, you forgot the other half, right? So there are cards that will double tokens and there are cards that will double counters, but none that double both. So I like the longevity of this card. So if they were to print a better Doubling Season tomorrow, you would play both in your deck. The answer is you'd play both, right? And then this goes into a lot of decks because it has both modes. So obviously decks that can take advantage of both modes is better, but it is your Anointed Procession. You know, if it's on color, you already own it, right? Like you don't need to go buy another one. So I feel like this is one of those cards that you buy and it's kind of the linchpin of multiple decks and like it's kind of worth. So this is actually, if you're like a Timmy counter token kind of person, this to me feels like a safe buy to throw in your collection, knowing that it's so popular, it will never go out of style. You know, it's not like you're buying a Stacks piece that's going to be soft banned tomorrow, right? Like this is kind of the epitome of Commander. So I actually kind of like this card. And maybe it gets a little cheaper, but they printed it twice already. Like how much cheaper is it going to get?
I think...
Are there a lot of decks that use both sides? Like I can't think of a single one, honestly.
I mean, there's a lot of decks that, like, you play a Planeswalker deck to double loyalty counters, and your Planeswalkers make tokens. Or, like, there's a lot of incidental synergies where, like, they just, like, accidentally do it. But I think the other argument I would make again for buying Doubling Season is it's the best at what it does, right? Like, I don't think any of us are arguing it's not the best at what it does. And if you want to get one of the half a Doubling Seasons, it's not like you're paying $2 for them. Like the half a Doubling Season effects, we talked about Anointed Procession is more than Doubling Season. Parallel Lives is still like $25, $26. Vorinclex is like $37. Mondrak was just printed. That's like $25. Like you're still going to spend a bunch of money. Isn't it worth it to scrape together an extra like $10 and get the actual best in class, probably going to go back to $100 compared to spending $25 or $30 on like a half of the effect?
So yes, because like I'm not convinced that most decks that run Doubling Season actually utilize both sides of it. Because like Super Friends is the exception, I believe. And I'm looking like online at EDH Rec. The Mother Goose actually does use both sides of that. That's very cute. But like then there's the doubling enchantments. Yenna only uses one side. Pure Imaginative Rascal only uses one side. It's +1/+1 counter side. Rise of Redeemed uses tokens, only that one side. So like most of the decks,
side though, right? So token decks use the doubling part, but then they finish with +1/+1 counters, which then double with the doubling season, right? So it doesn't any token deck
always, not necessarily.
I mean, but you put the Gavany Township in your deck, like you
have like
because you have the doubling season
in there.
This is available for you, right? I don't know.
I think we're underestimating just like how many synergies there are, because even if you look at like Yana or something, which seems like it uses one side, when you actually look at cards that are played in Yana, it's like Setessan Champions and Enchantress that gets counters. You have Calix is a Enchantress effects that gets counters. So you just like accidentally are like getting additional value. If I could pick up Parallel Lives for like $5 versus Doubling Season at $40, I would totally be like, okay, Doubling Season, whatever. I'll take the hit. Yeah, it's not always relevant, but since the price is like not that different to get the worst versions, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to buy the worst version for like $10 less. Like I don't know if it's worth it to save $10.
Doubling tokens is expensive, but +1/+1 counters, I believe, is not like hardened scales. Like those kind of effects aren't that expensive, right? So if you're using it for the counter effect, then you probably have good budget alternatives. But if you're using it for the doubling tokens, people love doubling tokens, so it's expensive. So you're not getting much discount for that.
It's also worth mentioning that like hardened scales is a single additional counter compared to double the number of counters, so it's not quite the same.
I think there's like the Hydra that doubles everybody's counters when it attacks. There's a lot of like sorceries and stuff that just say like double all the counters.
Deep Glow Skate, stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of ways of doing it. I think a lot of those ways are actually better, because the main issue of Doubling Season is usually I see somebody play it and then they pass, and then
you just don't like the card. Like if it was a cheap card, you think it'd still be overrated, right? Because it's a 5 mana pass the turn and probably
I think it's overplayed.
Yeah,
I think it's super overplayed.
I can see that argument.
Yeah. But it does such cool things.
If you it's like Panharmonicon. If you untap unscathed, you're popping off, but the table will not let you untap unscathed, right?
But if you're like a +1/+1 counter deck and you play Doubling Season and you pass a turn, like maybe some people are going to be really scared. I'm not. Like I'd be much more scared of like 1,000 other things. Like, and that's the problem, is I think like people are just jamming it into anything that it's relevant, and it's I don't know. It's like it's only when you play it in Super Friends where I'm like, okay, this needs to go, or else next turn you win the game. Like that's the only time I'm like, oh no. Even if you make more tokens,
we gotta give it to the audience to break our 2-2 tie. Let us know what you think about Doubling Season. If it's worth the price,
downvote away
at $40. We'll see how many green counters doubler players there are. Right. Krim,
yo,
what do you have for us for an expensive card?
Well, unfortunately, this doesn't have an anime art yet, but it is Esper Sentinel. It's $26, maybe $27. And I get it. Like, can I name you another one-drop Rhystic Buddy? No. But let me tell you something. White legitimately has so many ways to draw cards now, which is funny. And like for much cheaper. Like if Takasia's Welcome, which is like $4, and it probably plays well in this deck. I know that this triggers off every spell, the first spell each opponent will cast, but like this card to me just feels like most of the time, unless you're playing with Seth, like you are going to just like people are just gonna pay the one, right? Like it's only one that they have to pay.
So we have stats on this thing. Even a late game Esper Sentinel draws so many cards.
But why is
stats of Seth?
Yeah, the problem is you got to remember.
There's no way that I only have one turn every turn cycle. There's no way I can completely skew the stats on my own. As much as
you could. You easily could. You instant speed on an opponent's turn and still don't pay. So, like, legitimately though, I think that White has lots of ways to draw, and just for $26, this is just like, I don't know. It's like not really that great. It's in types that like get blown up pretty easily. I guess like the nice thing about it is that it's not offensive enough. Like Tomer isn't going to go like tunnel vision on a Rhystic Buddy, but he will on a Rhystic Study, right? But I think that's the feature, I guess, of Esper Sentinel, is that it can slide under the radar, because otherwise it's just a 1/1. But like I feel like this card is like abysmal in the late game. Like after like turn 5, which most casual games will go to, this card feels abysmal. And I would rather just play something that let's just say I am more likely to control the triggers of, like Takasia's Welcome or even Richard's. Actually, I'm not even going to play Rendezvous, but like not even Rendezvous, but there's just other ways that you can trigger card draw and more consistently and have more control over. And this one,
I got to step in and defend Esper Sentinel. This is like one of the first cards I would buy for my collection because
why?
It goes into literally every deck, any deck, and it's good. On top of the decks where it's like actually good, right? So if you're playing a human deck, or if you're playing like a weenie deck, like it triggers Takaja's Welcome. It triggers it, right? If you play equipment, you suit it up, and no one is paying now. You don't have to ask Seth. He's not paying like 3 for every spell. More. Right? There's just so many synergies. It synergizes with artifact decks. Like as a 1-drop, what more do you want, right? It comes down, it draws like 2 or 3 cards. You know, people have to remove it, or you run away with the game, or they have to like tax themselves. And because it goes in every deck, like if it was very situational, I can see, you know, maybe you could just play like Secret Rendezvous and call it a day. But I would take Esper Sentinel over Secret Rendezvous if I start a white deck, right? Like there's just so many accidental synergies that you can get with this card. Regardless of what you're playing. I think it literally goes in every deck from a white weenie to a 5-color insert random.
It would not go in a white weenie deck. It would go in a humans deck, sure. Like it's great.
Probably not go white weenie. It triggers.
You would not play it in a generic white deck? Oh.
No. Like seriously, like I'm not saying this card is bad and like not playable. Because I think that's the difference. I think it's average, it's fine. But I think it's fine. It's just I don't think it's worth $26, $27.
It's a weenie and it's white and it like divinates on the way down. Like,
artifacts, right? You're an artifact deck. Hey, let's not lie here, okay? Artifact decks don't need to worry about card draw or somehow breaking.
Because of this card. This card
not
helps.
Because of this card. This card is not why that it. This. Our Esper Sentinel is not why artifact decks are broken, and you know that. So
it helps.
Like, artifact decks aren't broken. I don't like this artifact.
Don't even notice. Oh, did I lose my Sentinel? Whatever. I'm still comboing. Do you have anything to do or no? Like the point here is
who hurt you?
Like artifact decks actually. And then like in a white weenie deck, like again, you just have more strategy, like more cards that can just probably be more beneficial. Like this is solid in a human deck or like maybe a Voltron deck because you can beef it up. But at that point, like that's only just a few decks and like it's not a bad card. It's just not $27 good. I just don't think it's $27 good.
Let's say you can set the price at which it's worth.
At the price that I would say it's worth, if it were like Rhystic Study and triggered on every spell, I would pay $27 for sure. But like if it's just at once on the first spell of each turn,
yep,
$10 card.
$10. Okay.
$10. I would buy this for $10.
I'm mostly with Richard in that I think this card's very worth it. Although I will say, as they keep printing more white card draw, I think it's a card that might be less necessary in the future because Wizards, like set by set, is just adding more and more card advantage. So I think this is like the best white card advantage spell, and you can play in any deck. So for me right now, it's worth it, even though it's expensive. But I do think like if we check back in a couple of years or 5 years, it'll still be fine, but I think you'll probably have better budget options in the future for your card advantage slots where you won't really have to have Esper Sentinel, even though I still think this will probably be one of the best ones.
I mean, so you believe that it is so good that it's just so good that you would pay an absurdly high price for it? Because I just already don't feel like it's worth its price tag. It's I'm
kind of in the
pricey.
like. So I think we just view its power level a little differently because I'm kind of in the like, I'll jam this in a random 5-color deck and just call it card advantage. Like it doesn't have to be humans or soldiers or like, I think I view it as a card that you can just jam in any deck and get value out of because just like the stats we've seen, like even in the late game, it draws more cards than 1 mana is worth. So I'm convinced statistically that any deck benefits from playing this.
We need a non-Seth season and see the stats.
We did.
One card a turn. It's over. What's your opinion on this card?
We did that, and Phil didn't draw a single card.
Yeah, that was one time it looked bad, right? All the other times it popped off.
So Well, it also slows. Like worst case, like this is the same thing with first six study. Like the floor
argument.
of it. No, the floor of it is no. It's not the argument part. It's the floor of it is that you're slowing down your opponents. Like there's sometimes where you play like an Esper Sentinel, and then my turn 2 play was going to be an Arcane Signet or something, and then I say no, I'm going to play my Arcane Signet on turn 3, and that puts like my game plan like.
You do that?
Full turn behind. Yeah.
Really? That's an option? I didn't even know that was a possibility.
Piece, right? In the worst case, is what Tomer is saying.
Yeah, but it was effective. Like, it slows down everybody else's game plan. The way I approach both cards is I just tell the table, like, hey, if everybody pays the 1, I don't care the excuse. As long as you pay the 1, I will pay the 1. And that's my offer. And then as soon as somebody breaks that, I don't care what the reason is. Then I stop paying it as well. That's how but anyway, the point is, I think this card is very good. I have definitely built decks that don't run it because on budget because it's $26. But like, if I think it is worth it in most like white heavy decks. I wouldn't put it in a 5-color deck. But like I have it in my equipment deck, for example. And anytime I slide like a sword on it, then you're not going to pay the 3 ever. So that's really awesome, and it holds it really nicely. I have it in my Selenia deck, which is white black. Not to pump it, it's just good. And I can grab it with the Ranger of Eos and stuff. So, but yeah, it's replaceable. It's like $26 is a bit obscene, and I think it is going to get worse over time. It's going to have more competition over time, so it's easier to replace.
I will say it depends how Richard like you are. If you think Secret Rendezvous, Coveted Jewel, your Temple's under attack, like those cards are unplayable, then Esper Sentinel stock goes way up, right? Because like, what are you drawing cards with at this point? Tokasia's Welcome? Well, Esper Sentinel synergizes with that, right? Like Welcoming Vampire, like. But if you are okay with like Secret Rendezvous and stuff like that, then Esper Sentinel is less necessary, right? So it depends on where you are with what white is doing.
Hold on. I don't think this doesn't take away. Like, I appreciate Tokasia's Welcome. I appreciate Welcoming Vampire. And I think those are much better priced and way more like worth their value. Like, because like, I can control that, right? Like, I can control that.
Yes.
Like,
if you're looking to draw cards off it, then those are going to objectively be better because, like, if the table rallies against paying the 1, or if rallies to pay the 1, then it's not going to be drawing cards. It's going to be staxing. And like I remember Phil's response to it is like, if it's just a stack piece, I'm not going to run it in my deck, which is valid.
But we know how the real community.
We know that
we know how this actually works in reality. Rhystic Study is a great card. It is not a 3-mana Thalia. Okay, it is a great draw engine. Right, that's how it works in reality.
We're living in Wizards' idealized world of slivers and shrines being the top decks in historic right now. Like everyone always takes the ones.
People pay for it.
It's not a fairy. People pay for it all the time, and it's only
it is true. I went to conventions, and everybody, like, all I said is like, if everybody pays for it, I'll pay for it. We all agreed. The study did not draw a single card. Like, that's just how it is.
Well, it's even easier with this because it's only once, right? Like,
I
don't know.
Grim. I agree with you. If that is the world we live in, that everyone pays, this card is not good. But I do not believe that is the world we live in.
I just think like you want to have the Welcoming Vampire, Tokasia's Welcome, and this. That's the problem. I was like
that package goes with this usually, right? Yeah.
As soon as we get more card draw, then I'll be like, all right, this one gets less and less worth it.
Do not mistake this for me thinking the card is garbage. I don't think it's garbage. I think it's a little overrated though. But like I do think it's like it's fine. But like Tokasia Welcoming Vampire, those are like way better for the price. So I don't know. I just think those are just the bigger bang for your buck, and because you can probably get all like the 3 or the rest of the card advantage engine of your deck for the price of this Sentinel.
Yep. All right. Next up. Oh no. It's me, Richard. And I have brought to you Cyclonic Rift.
Okay.
Clocking it at $26. And I don't even want to argue with you guys about price. Okay. I think even if this was a $5 card, this is not a good card.
Richard, stop.
I actually do not like this card, let alone dropping $30. There's one home for this card, and it's like Drago decks.
No.
Most other decks cannot win with a Cyclonic Rift, and I've seen time and time again. It bounces the board, and then everyone just redeploys and murders you because like you need to bounce the board and win.
Richard,
But if you're going to do that, just play Time Walk, right? Just play like the one card,
a circus of clowns, Richard. We're gonna get dubbed as a circus of clowns right now,
Richard. I hear the comment section right now. It's like Richard always has the most clickbait.
This is not a hot take. Check my blue decks.
It is a hot take, Richard. It is a hot take.
It is a hot take, but I actually believe it. No, you guys don't see
penny.
How people like play Rift and like it doesn't do what they want most of the time. Like it just like sits there and is like 2 mana bounce that is not, good. Or you hold up 7 mana, everyone murders you because they know you're holding Rift. And if you manage to Rift, they're like, okay, we'll take a turn off, deploy all our mana rocks, and then kill you. Like, you need a Rift and then win immediately. But you could have just played a finisher to do that, right? Like, you could have played a Time Walk or something. Like,
oh, you got a Time Walk on this budget episode? Hold on.
Wow.
No one's with me? You think Cyclonic Rift is the greatest thing ever?
Not only am I not with you, I'm reevaluating Swords to Plowshares and Secret Rendezvous based on this take. Now I'm wondering if I'm on the wrong team.
Are you guys all like Rift is first card in your deck is Cyclonic Rift when you play Blue?
What is the first thing you think of when you think of Blue in Commander? I think it is Cyclonic Rift.
Well, and Mana Drain, but yes. Sure, 3 counters in Cyclonic Rift, pretty much.
Yeah.
I can see the
credibility of our podcast.
I can see the argument. I can see the argument that like I leave this out of my deck sometimes because I don't like the card. The same reason I leave Fierce Guardianship out of my decks because I just don't really like how it plays out sometimes. But I think on power level, I can't see any argument for it being like, yes, it's really expensive, but what are your other options? Like you're dropping down to Evacuate or something, and the power level difference is like Cyclonic Rift's like super S tier, and then Evacuate's like C- or something. Like there's a huge drop to the next best thing, right?
You did skip over Consuming Tides, but
I've made like hundreds of budget blue decks that cannot afford Cyclonic Rift. I've run the Consuming Tides. I love Consuming Tide. I run Flood of Tears, Evacuation, Engulf the Shore, like every single board wipe, you name it. Also the colorless options like Oblivion Stone and all that stuff. I can tell you with a sure fact that Cyclonic Rift is just way better than all of them. And I would, if I could run it in my $50 deck, I would. This card is bananas. I will run it in basically any 2-color deck that's in blue. Like, obviously, I would. 3-color decks that are in blue.
Why not all color decks?
I'm just blue.
It's not mana intensive.
Yeah, pretty much any deck. Any deck.
Yeah,
any deck, it makes sense. Like I won't in my personal decks because I stick to themes. Like I just like themes, like I'll try to stick for thematic board wipes and stuff. But like, yeah, Cyclonic is probably better than most of the options that I put there because it's just so good.
Like this is definitely worth its price. I think right now more than ever.
It's currently $26.
It is down a bit from Commander Masters. Yeah,
it got a reprint in Commander Masters. It's. The fact that it's instant speed is like the major, like it is like if you wanted your fog, somebody swing at it or you crack it. If board wipes, so like if you have a lethal army and they have blockers, you just bounce their board and you can swing for lethal. It puts everybody, it like time walks every single opponent as they have to redeploy. It makes them discard down to hand
like
size.
One person, right?
My boy Richard out here arguing for obscuring haze.
And
okay. You guys win. Cyclonic Rift is worth it. I need to work harder. I've whittled Seth down over the years. Swords to Plowshares, Secret Rendezvous, Fog.
You destroyed it.
The next step is Cyclonic Rift.
That's the line.
The next step is Cyclonic Rift.
You went too far.
I've seen it do nothing too many times, and we don't play it that much in our group anymore. I don't because of like time reasons. That's like a different reason, right? Like because it bounces the board, everyone redeploys. But if you guys were correct in that it actually ended games, we would see it more, right? But no, but everyone redeploys and the game drags on for another 2 hours.
Oh, it's annoying. That's for sure. It is annoying.
You guys win. Okay, Cyclonic Rift.
It's
worth the price.
May not immediately end the game right after you cast it, by the way, but you can definitely feel the momentum shift, right? Like there is now a new swing in the game.
Into Arch Enemy, where you will then start dying because you've only dealt with one person.
Sure.
It's so good that if we did a podcast on expensive cards that are worth the price, the first card I would say is Cyclonic Rift.
Whoa, really? Doubling season.
Doubling season. Actually, I'd say probably like Fierce Guardian.
I would definitely say Cyclonic Rift 100%.
Rift is like half the price too. So yeah. Actually.
Why don't you guys ever play? We need to play it more.
I play it. I just don't draw it.
You never have 7 mana to cast it without knocking.
I do. Never gets to 7 mana.
But I do.
Crim
that last episode, I literally have 30 mana.
Yeah, Crim has it everything.
All right,
I just like theme cards. So
Seth, hit us up with the card.
I got a card that is really, really not even a little bit close to being worth it. Maybe if you're playing CDH, but otherwise, and that is a Jeweled Lotus. So Jeweled Lotus is a Black Lotus, but only for your commander. 0 mana artifact, tap it, sack it. 3 mana, can only spend it on your commander. And this is a card that, yes, it does do something that's powerful, which is potentially let you ramp out your commander earlier in the game. But I don't think that's actually as good as you think it is. So it costs $100, which is a massive amount of money. It's one of the most expensive non-reserve list cards in the entire commander format. It is the very, very top end of the price scale. And then if you do actually live the dream and cast your commander early, I'm not sure that necessarily leads to you winning the game, because you're definitely going to immediately become the arch enemy, especially if you're playing in a casual table. And if you can't close out the game right away, we've seen Richard, the classic, like, Jeweled Lotus out my commander before we banned it on Commander Clash, only to get Path or Swords or whatever. And like, you're the enemy for the rest of the game. So I would not, in any deck, want to spend $100 on a Jeweled Lotus. If I was playing CDH, yes, that would be different. But for playing casual, I think you could spend your $100 on many, many other cards that would be way more beneficial and probably increase your win rate.
Like Cyclonic Rift.
It's down to $75. Jeweled Lotus is currently priced at $75.
Oh, is it less than
Commander Masters brought it down.
Okay. Well, same argument. Even at $75, I still am not going to buy a Jeweled Lotus.
The only reason why I would say don't spend the money on Jeweled Lotus is it's so strong that most casual tables, if you bring that out, they'll give you the stink eye. Like, they'll be like, all right, come on. You really want to win that bad? Come on. Like in CDH, it's fine, but like, yeah, if you do, like in a format of called Commander, where your entire deck is usually built around your commander being on the battlefield, having your commander come out 3 turns before it's supposed to is actually that strong. It's like bananas how good this card is. But yeah, like I would only agree not to spend money on it because it is too try hard and casual. Like, just leave this out. Most people are not going to be doing it due to price.
I'm not gonna lie to you though. I will say that I think it's fine in casual if you play it in your like 9 mana Myojin deck and you really need to get that Myojin out a few turns early. What
about my 6 mana Niv-Mizzet? Can I play it in my 6 mana?
No, not in that deck. That deck is the sweatiest deck I have ever played against. So, but yeah, like I genuinely think like if you're playing like a Drakaseth deck or some kind of absurd 7+, 6+ mana deck that isn't Niv-Mizzet, I think it's actually really, really fine there. But yeah, I don't think it's worth the price.
But if you're getting your like commander out on turn 1, like, just no. Just
but do you really want to spend $100 or $75 on Myojin or whatever? Like that seems like the worst thing to do. If I'm building Myojin, do I really want to put that card in that deck?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? You want to see Myojin, right?
I know y'all don't take me seriously after Cyc Rift, but you don't want to power... Like, most people play this card wrong. What they do is they power out their commander, maybe slap a boots on it, and hope they untap, right? And then you instantly become arch enemy, and you'll get, like, swept away, or like, people will deal with it quite easily. What you really want to do is, like, hold till you have, like, 6 mana or something, drop the Jeweled Lotus, drop your commander, combo win, and, like, that's the end of the game. Most people do not play like that, right? If you you don't want to just power out your commander for no reason. It exposes it to board wipes, removal, sack effects. Like, there's all kinds of things, even if you think you've protected your commander. So I don't like how people play the card normally. $75 is a lot. You can play a lesser Jeweled Lotus that people are not thrilled about. Do you play Dark Ritual? Do you play Seething Song? Do you play like these fast mana spells to power out your commander? Most people do not. Right? And it's just a lesser Lotus, right? A Lotus nets 3 mana, whereas the Rituals net 2 mana. But people don't play those, but then they're all super excited about Jeweled Lotus for some reason, because it has the name Lotus in it. So, I don't know. I do think it's overhyped. I think only a few specific decks would need it, and even in those decks, like you wouldn't. It's like not worth $75. Like if you're playing all rituals and seething songs, and you're like, yeah, we need this. I'm like, okay, I get you, right? You're playing like LED for some reason to like get it out. Like, okay, you need this, right? But most people, I think, are doing it wrong. They get their commander out early, it gets killed, and they're like, oh, I can't cast my commander ever again, right? And then like that's that, right? So, yeah.
I think if you have like a value, if you have an engine commander, getting it out 3 turns early is definitely worth it. Even getting the ire of the table, because if they don't have the answer, if a lot of people don't believe in like Swords to Plowshares or whatever, then you have like a couple turns.
Yeah, but I believe in our revelation to get around your boots and your protection spell and the farewell to cut right through it, right? Like there are ways to get rid of your protection as well, right?
I don't know. I see who's running Jeweled Lotus in EDH. I reckon it's all just CEDH decks. It's just CEDH decks.
I mean, CEDH it makes sense, right?
And also, I think the difference between a Dark Ritual and Jeweled Lotus is not underrated. Like 3 mana, net 2 mana versus net 3 mana, and any colors, not just black.
Isn't Dark Ritual just way better? Because you can spend it on your other 99 cards instead of just a single card that you may or may not even want to be playing on any given turn?
This is one more mana, though.
It's one more mana, and if the point of your deck is to get your commander out and keep your commander on the battlefield, then Jewel Lotus is just way better. Like the only point
you can also recur Jewel Lotus as well. I mean, we're talking CDH territory, right? But you can also recur it as well.
But like so many decks are all about your commander, so like I don't know.
$75. That's so much money.
It's
I would never spend it for a casual deck. I would never spend that money for a casual deck. CDH, yeah, sure. But like, if I saw it, I would be like raising my eyebrow a little bit.
All right, Tomer, hit us up.
Oh, okay. So this is an easy one. It's a classic. Everybody loves it. It's the black version of Wrath of God. It's Damnation, and it's $18. It's 4 mana, 2 double black sorcery, destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated. It's just time. It's color shifted Wrath of God, and this card is really sweet. I remember long ago there was like memes about it finally getting reprinted. It like took years and years for it to get a single reprint. The card was super expensive, but these days, like Toxic Deluge, I think it's like $12, and it's 3 mana, and like you lose a little bit of life to cast it, but it costs 1 less mana to do it, and it's a little bit easier to cast as well. There's just a lot of options these days. There's more and more board wipes, and I think Damnation, just 4 mana, wrap the board, destroy all creatures, is just like it's still fine. It's still a good card, but like I don't know, you could just run other board wipes. And
I gotta ask you, in Mono Black though, so Toxic Deluge #1.
Yes.
What actually is somewhat good for a Mono Black deck beyond Toxic Deluge and then discounting Damnation for now? Because I was actually looking through this and I was like, I was actually shocked at how bad black is at wrathing. Like, they have a lot of situational wraths. Like, if I have a bunch of swamps, I can mutilate. If you have a bunch of small creatures, I can ritualist or something. I guess you got Crux of Fate is probably the next best one. That's destroy all dragons or non-dragons at 5 mana. And then you got some 6 and 7 and 8 mana options. But I was surprised. I actually came away from researching this feeling like Damnation. I was ready to agree. My initial impulse was, yes, it's probably overrated to play another Wrath. And then when I looked through the list of Wraths, I was like, wow, I actually think I need Damnation in my mono black decks because the other options beyond Toxic Deluge are like kind of meh.
I'll give you. So Decree of Pain, Mutilate, Meatball Massacre. The one that has like snow permanence, so you can play Snowlands, but that's kind of like
snow.
Yeah, and then you go to the 5 mana Wraths, Crux of Fate, right? But then you go to the colorless Wraths. You got Boom Pile, Navinral's Disc, Oblivion Stone, Ugin.
Boom Pile.
You scoff, but like these like Mutilate has a purpose, right? It's -X that removes indestructible things. Right? Like Ugin exiles things, right? Like Boom Pile removes non-creatures, right? It's not like a strict upgrade. Like I feel we haven't seen a Damnation. Has Krim snapped the Damnation off? He's the only one that plays this card. No one else plays this card.
I play Damnation. Toxic Deluge Damnation 1 and 2 for my Black Wraths.
So when I'm going for Black Wraths, if I'm mono black, because like if we're going multicolor, then there's a lot of options. Right. But if I'm mono black, then instead of Damnation, which is $18, I could go just like a Mutilate, which will still get the job done basically most of the time in mono black. In mono black,
will it though?
What about Extinction Event? That's another one that I like. 4 mana, choose
like
odd or
that.
even, exile each creature with mana value of the chosen value. Okay,
That's
and
like
then
half a
Oblivion
wrath, though.
Stone. If I'm mono black, I always run Oblivion Stone because it gets rid of artifacts and enchantments as well. So I don't know,
7
this-
total mana.
7
Yeah.
total mana, but
It's
it
8, right?
gets rid
It's
of
5,
problems.
3.
Oh, is it 5? Yeah, it's 8 total mana.
Yeah.
It's 8 total, but it gets rid of artifacts and enchantments,
Yes.
which black doesn't actually have access
Yep.
to on a mass scale.
Yep.
So yeah,
But
and then
like-
Decree of Pain is quite fun too. Yeah, it's more expensive, but it draws you a lot of cards.
But this
And
is
then
just a
Crux of Fate, it's like-
clean, unconditional wrath, though.
Yeah, but you guys just like
Even
for
like
the
so-
Crux of Fate.
But you
For
never
5.
play.
No,
like,
no, it's not,
If you
'cause
play
let's say
white,
the
you never
Changeling
play Wrath
player,
of
right?
God. You're like, this is
Nobody
so
likes
mid, right? Like you never play Wrath
Sure.
of God. So
Sure.
when you're in black, if I'm faced with this choice of playing this super mediocre card, I would just be like, nah. Play another tutor or threat or something, right? Like before I start going to this like super mediocre card. Like if you
But of
can't
course-
find another Wrath
Really?
of
Hold on,
liking-
Richard. No,
So you're
no,
only
no,
going to play
no,
one
no.
Wrath in your black
No,
deck?
I like the other Wraths. Like I like the colorless ones, right? But if I was playing blue, for example, and there's all mid Wraths, I don't start playing them. I just be like, here's a Time Walk or something, right? Like here's another offensive spell, or here's another card draw spell, and we'll just like ignore this rather than playing this mediocre card.
But like we play Azuri's, like the context matters though, because in green we're like hyped to play Azuri's Predation, which is like a pitiful way to sweep the board. It's like 8 mana and it
Because
doesn't
you
even
get
kill those
4/4s
things.
out of it. You don't just
But
sweep
that's
the
'cause-
board. You get giant creatures, right?
But like that's because it's green and green isn't good at it. Like I think you can't evaluate Damnation compared to like Farewells
White.
and
Yeah,
Obscure
White just-
Commands.
yeah.
Like White's the best at it. So I don't think it's fair to be like, oh, because it's not as good as the White Wrath, it's bad.
So y'all
It's-
Damnation. I swear I've never seen you cast Damnation
this
outside
is
of Crim.
straight up disrespectful that you would even say this right now to Damnation.
I know
Dude,
Tomer,
this
maybe
is-
it's Tomer's budget, but like we rarely ever see this card. Like very
It's
rarely.
true.
I don't know. Yeah,
I
like,
just casted it like not that long ago.
like if I'm mono black, Toxic Deluge is cheaper and I think just more effective. And then I go Oblivion Stone because it gets rid of artifacts and enchantments. And then probably like the Extinction Event would be pretty fun for me too. And then like a Decree of Pain.
Okay,
And
okay.
I don't know.
Seth, you're
I
in
think
mono
Extinction
black.
Event's horrible.
You play Toxic Deluge. Do you
Yeah, I
put
got caught by
a
it.
tutor in your deck as your next as your next Wrath, or do you play Damnation?
What
So
you put
normally,
the Damnation?
if I'm building mono black, it's normally
Yeah.
Toxic Deluge in the deck, Damnation in the deck, and I've kind of come back around on Degree of Pain a little bit as number 3, just because I like drawing cards. I dropped it for a while, but it's come back. So those are usually the 3 Wraths that I'm going to play in my black decks.
I usually do Toxic Deluge, Damnation, Decree, and then now Meat Hook Massacre.
I actually think, I would argue that's not worth the price. If we want to talk a black Wrath, but it's
Ooh,
not
how
worth
much
the
is
price,
Meat
I would
Hook
say like
Massacre right now?
$40-ish
like
Meat
$40.
Hook.
It is
Yeah.
overpriced as heck. But
That one I could get behind being not worth the price.
yeah, I mean it is definitely pricey, but I do like that the enchantment sits around. But yeah,
Yeah.
I would play those and then like Ugin, right? Like Ugin's obviously very good. Ugin's absurdly good. No question there. But dude, Damnation not even number 2. Damnation is just locked at number 2. It's unconditional. It answers everything and it's so cheap. It's so efficient.
It's
in
like
its
being
colors.
the number 2 blue sweeper. Like who cares? Like
Hey.
it's so bad.
I guess
Yo,
if you have a
if
high
you have
tolerance
more than one
for
Wrath.
boom piles and so forth, like I could see how Richard would value it less than I would, because I don't play boom pile or Nev's disc or whatever, Oblivion Stone typically. So
Yeah,
if you
but
have a
also
high
Richard-
tolerance for those cards, and maybe it's less necessary.
But Richard's
High
philosophy
tolerance.
is to not be the one that answers the board. It's rather to ask more questions, right?
Well, my philosophy is
So-
to answer the entire board at once. Like I don't like
What
creature
does
only
Damnation
Wraths.
do?
No. Because you can remove artifacts, enchantments, planeswalk. You can remove the whole thing.
Boom Pile
So
is like
I would go
it's a
colorless.
50-50.
I would go
Yeah.
colorless
Do the
before
job.
this.
I'm sorry, Richard. I like the sure thing. I'm not going to sit there on a boom pile and pray to
Then you sit on
RNGs.
Ugin.
I
You sit
like
on Oblivion
Ugin and
Stone, right? If
I like
if you
Ugin.
have a
Ugin
lower
eight-
risk tolerance.
Ugin's 8 mana. And also Oblivion Stone, if I just play it out, it's going to get blown
No,
up.
you gotta
Well,
do it
you
the
just-
same
you
turn. You
save
can't
until you
just
got
put
8
it out and
mana.
hope you untap with it.
Yeah, it's an 8 mana card.
Yeah.
Dude, that's the same as like, I'll just
Okay,
leave
so what's the
Perilous
conclusion
Vault out
then? We
there.
like Damnation or we don't like Damnation? I'm not
I
sure
think
where
it's
we ended.
split. I think we're split. I'm with Krim, and I like
Vote
it.
again.
I think Damnation,
Damnation
is worth it. It is worth the price.
Is worth it. Tomer?
Is worth.
Not worth it.
Krim says worth. I say not worth. So we're split
worth.
again. We got
ChatGPT.
We need ChatGPT full time on this podcast. There's just too much disagreement. Okay, Krim, hit us up with the card.
Okay, very easily. It's Force of Negation. I think this card is absurdly expensive for $45. Now, yeah, again, CDH players, calm down. Like the whole casual side of Magic, like there's no reason that I need to 2-for-1 myself. And also only non-creature spells. Right? If I'm going to play a free counter spell and I'm already doing this, like 2-for-1, I'm going to play Force of Will instead.
And not on your turn.
Yeah, the not on your turn and only non-creature, right? Like, so it's kind of narrow for $45. It's just that simple. It's too narrow for $45. It's a free counterspell. I get it. But, like, it's just because it's a free counterspell doesn't mean it's good. There's not much that you're doing, like, in casual where, like, if you're trying to push a combo through, this doesn't help with that.
I mean, we just did the free spell ranking a couple podcasts ago, and this definitely was not like one of the finalists, like Force of Will, Fierce Guardianship. It's a fine card, but I think Krim's very right on this. It's very inflated because it's a modern staple where it is like very necessary to make modern work. So I think you're paying a really big tax. If this was not modern legal, it would probably be like, I don't know, half of its current price or something. Yeah, it would be way, way less. So I think you're paying a big tax because of modern on this one. And I would rather, Fierce Guardianship is cheaper than this now, and it's way better in Commander. Force of Will is more flexible, but a little more expensive. Or you can just like play a counterspell and like not spend a bunch of money on your counterspell slot at all if you want to, if you're going budget.
Misdirection.
Yeah, there's a bunch of no.
Play like
I assumed Kevin was saying something reasonable, so I agreed. But yes, I agree with Krim. Overrated.
Of all the cards that we've listed so far, this is the only one that I would say, even if I wasn't on a budget, I would not run it in any casual deck. Me.
Yeah, I think that's actually true.
That might be too much. If it was free, I think it has a serious spot in your deck. It's not like an auto start your deck with it, but it still is a 3-mana counterspell.
That's true.
You can still pay for it, right?
3-mana negate.
Yeah, negate. But you can play like Swan Song. What's the Capenna one that's also similar?
Offer You Can't Refuse is
Offer You Can't Refuse. There's a lot cheaper effects. You can even play
Power Spell.
Pact of Negation. I like it more too. It's still $10 or something, but it's cheaper than this.
Misdirection.
Literal
negate. Like I feel if you just play literal negate,
like
90% of the time it does the same thing, right? Like because you can't force through your combo. Like this is slightly worse off, right? It's just to protect yourself. So. Yeah. Oh, we finally agreed on something. Thank you.
It took a while.
Krim, the blue mage of all, had to bring us together with Force of Negation.
Yeah. Also, me, the blue mage, bringing up Force of Negation.
Oh, I got a good one. Sylvan Library. Okay. It's a $20 card. $21. It's 2-mana enchantment. It's a green card. At the beginning of your draw step, you may draw 2 additional cards. If you do, choose 2 cards in your hand drawn this turn. For each of those cards, pay 4 life or put the card on top of your library. So a little top deck manipulation. 4 life per card. You can draw 2 more. That's 8. We used to go ham on this card. Back in the day, like everyone would just play Sylvan Library, pay 8, draw 2. I feel green card draw has gotten a lot stronger in the past few years. We don't need to lie on Sylvan Library. Like that 8 life is meaningful. Like if you do it once, okay, sure, but you just cycled. You do it 2-3 times. That's a meaningful, knock against your life total. I feel we don't need this card anymore. It's certainly not for $21. But green has like Toski effects, the go wide draw. It has the go big card draw based on power, harmonize. I don't know. I just don't think it's worth $20. I don't play it anymore. Seth, you pay a lot of life for cards. Do you?
No. Like I'm. To me, this is like a very boomerish card. Like this is a card that 10 years ago was like one of the best green cards that I played in every single deck. I loved it, Pay the Life. But we've just gotten like green has gotten so powered up with card advantage over the last few years that now I almost never put this in any deck. I actually have a food deck with like some of the Lord of the Rings stuff that I was like going back and forth. I have a copy of Sylvan Library in paper, and I was like, should I play this in the food deck? And I was actually debating it. If any deck would be perfect for it, it's like this food deck that's gaining all this life. And even there, I was kind of like, I don't even know if I want it. So yeah, I think this is just like a boomer card that people still play because they remember it being good a while ago when there's just better options now. I don't even know if this card's really good anymore. Although it is good with fetch lands. Like you can avoid the life payment and do the brainstorm fetch land trick, sort of. So I guess that's kind of nice to change the top of your library. But really, I think it's not worth $20.
Green also has the cards that like you can play creatures at the top of your deck or something. So there's like top deck manipulation synergies, but a lot of people just play this as
Augur of Autumn.
Draw.
And,
yeah.
I kind of agree. I don't know. I still think like if it was a dirt cheap card, I'd still probably jam it in a bunch of decks because I don't know. Whenever I see Sylvan Library in my hand, I'm happy to see it. Like turn 2, if I don't have a rampant growth or something, I just jam a Sylvan Library, and I kind of feel confident that if I need to draw a land or something, then I get to dig 3 cards in and see if I find the land drop, or if I don't want to hit a land, then I can like just put that card that was going to be a land into something else. Like I don't know, it's nice. And then if I don't need life, then I'm just going to pay. Well, I'm just going to draw 2 cards every single turn. I'm not a coward. Like it's for 2 mana, it's still just good, but it's just it doesn't. It's not something one of those things that feels as essential as it did like many years ago. But like I don't know, it's for 2 mana. It just seems still like good value, but like $20 value, I don't know.
I think this still holds up. I think this still holds up. It's not, you may not need it anymore like you once did. Like it wasn't the only card advantage engine, but for 2 mana, $20, sure thing here. This is a sure kind of thing. Like I can at least get additional cards if I want to. I think I still like it. I see it trending downwards, sure. But like as of right now in the current year, I think it's still pretty solid.
But for $6 more, you get Esper Sentinel, and that's not worth your threshold is right about $20, right?
No, because this guarantees me the draw, right? Like
yeah, true.
Like the difference here is it's Esper Sentinel's on a body, and on like this is on an enchantment, and on top of that, this for sure gets me the card if I really need it.
I'm very curious how y'all be hating on my Phyrexian Arenas, but in love with Sylvan Library. I'm very confused.
Well, this is 2 cards, and you get to dig a little deeper. But I'm also Team Phyrexian Arena, though.
Yeah, but you happily pay that 8 life.
Yeah, but with Phyrexian Arena, I only have to pay 1.
Oh, no. If you're comparing it to Phyrexian Arena, no.
This card was like $5. It's okay. Like, it's okay. Like, it's never, like, horrendous, right? It's not like you're going to start losing games because you have this. Well, maybe you pay too much life, right? But, usually this card is solid and will improve your deck. But just by a minor amount, like, I don't think it's worth $20. I think if you have one around or, it's like $3 or something, like, it's a fine card. It's okay. But it's not the essential card that it used to be that I think a lot of people are remembering. And, they started in their deck and like, I absolutely need this card. Otherwise, it doesn't. My deck doesn't function. I think we're way past that. And
this used to be like card 1 or 2, right? Like immediately for green. So yeah.
But
I mean, it's no longer card 1 or 2, but it's still, I think, a top 20 card in green.
That's too much to unpack for this podcast.
I don't think it's worth $20. I don't think it's worth. I don't know. I don't think it's worth $20 anymore. But I think it's like if you have it, you should still probably jam it if you want to.
Okay.
Still, it's never bad.
So it's worth.
It's never bad.
That's not. Is it worth?
So it's worth.
If you have it already, you might as well use it. But if you don't,
if you have it, you're not spending $20. Then it's free, right? Like, if you have it already.
But like if you're really gonna put it
borderline worth,
right? Like if it's as I said, it
okay. Time for our sponsored segment, guys. Say you have a Sylvan Library. Do you snap it off the card conduit or do you stick it in a green deck? It's worth $20. This will answer whether it's worth or not right here.
But buy list, we really get the full 20. I kept mine. I ended up putting it in the food deck. I went back and forth for like an hour and then put it in the food deck. So I literally did keep mine and find a deck for it.
Well,
but I wouldn't go out
it
and
gets
buy
you
it.
more value if you use our affiliate code. So does that change? Does that change your decision making?
It's still in my food.
So
deck.
I would
It's still in
personally
my food
snap it
deck.
off because it's only going to get worse over time. Wizards is only
Yes.
printing more and more powerful cards.
Yep.
Everything is a Toski now. Like we're only getting better and better card draw. So whatever value it maintains today, like its card draw value is just going to go down over time. So I would actually get rid of it. Like I don't think it improves my deck significantly, and there's no point.
Dang.
Okay, Seth. Oh, I thought we were done with reserve list. We're back at it.
We got one more. Well, I was going back and
Reserve
forth. Is it even fair to put reserve list cards on the list? But I decided I had to talk about Wheel of Fortune. I used to be the biggest Wheel of Fortune defender of all time. I
You're like the
argued
number
that it
one
was
hater
necessary. Like, I mean, I don't hate Wheel of. Well, I don't think I hate Wheel of Fortune, but it's almost $300. It's like it is on the reserve list. The cheapest version is like $289. Even the collector's edition, which isn't even tournament legal, is like $250 almost. So it is very, very expensive. If you don't know what Wheel does, 3 mana in red, everyone discards their hand and draws 7 cards. So this is an effect that I used to argue was essential for red decks. I thought you just had to play Wheel of Fortune because you didn't really have a lot of good sources of card advantage, but that was 10 years ago or something. Over the last few years, things have really changed for red. Red is actually now very good at generating card advantage with various like impulse draw effects, exile the top card of your library and play it this turn, even just straight up like reckless impulse, just like exile 2 cards and you play them to the end of your next turn. All this is red is much, much better at generating card advantage. So the fact that red has other ways of generating card advantage has kind of turned me off to Wheels as an archetype, because the downside of Wheels is you're also drawing your opponents theoretically a lot of cards. There's a lot of times in a 4-player game that you're only getting, 4 or 5 new cards, and the rest of the table is getting way more than that when you cast a wheel. So wheels are kind of a little bit sketchy in general. But even if you really want a wheel, there are way cheaper versions. Wheel of Mitch Fortune is almost similar if you want to pay some life, and it's like $3. There's Reforge the Soul, which is like a miracle wheel. It's 5 mana or 2 mana if you miracle it. That's like $5. Magus of the Wheel is kind of sketchy because it's a creature that needs to lose summoning sickness, but it's like 30 cents. So I don't think you need wheels in general. And even if you want a wheel, there's budget options that I would play over spending almost $300 on Wheel of Fortune. So I think Wheel of Fortune, maybe there's some very specific CDH decks that you want it, but otherwise, like I cannot imagine spending $300 on this card. Play some impulse draw.
Play Wheel of Misfortune if you really wanted to. That's
Play
fun.
Wheel of Misfortune, or Ruin Grinder, or like Ruin Horn
Magus
Helga.
of
There's
the
like,
Wheel.
Yeah, there's a lot of very cheap options if you really insist on playing a wheel. And I would argue that wheels in general are just, in most decks, if you're playing a wheel deck, a Nekuzar deck or something, that's different. But just in general, like my red deck needs to generate card advantage. I think wheels are bad at that now. Like the wheels that used to be necessary, but now I don't think they're actually a good option for that role.
I agree. No,
I fully agree. Yeah.
Nothing new to say there. Just you nailed it.
I'm gonna be honest with you, like it's hard to actually like the reserve list as a whole. A lot of the cards on there, I just cannot justify purchasing. The only the only one that I think is a hard to like replicate effect. Even then, actually no, because of the Ixalan enchantment. I was gonna say Gaia's Cradle, but all of those just don't feel worth it. They all just.
What about
don't feel worth
MTG
it.
Finance All Star Spoils of Evil?
Is that on the reserve list?
It is.
Well, now this is your fault. Like, yeah, I guess I don't even know what that does. So no, I can't replicate.
I'm
going to
gift it to you for your Rogue deck. How about that?
Okay, what does it do?
You won't play it though.
What does it do?
Okay. It says it's a 3 mana instant. For each artifact or creature in target opponent's graveyard, you add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool and you gain 1 life. So if you're milling them, you count all the artifacts and creatures in their graveyard. You make that much mana and you gain that much life.
Kind of good, but that we're on Wheel of Fortune, and 2023 poses a threat to Wheel of Fortune. Like you can't give everyone a new hand because you've just loaded them up with a very powerful interaction, a lot of which is free. Right? Yep. Like you do not want to wheel your opponent into a fierce guardianship to then stuff you in your tracks. You don't want to wheel them into Fairy's Protection. You don't want to do this anymore. So in terms of like raw card advantage, I don't think it's worth it anymore. I will say there are times where we need like the defensive wheel. like someone has drawn 30 cards and we're like, oh, we gotta wheel them back down to 7, right? But that's so niche and you probably won't get that wheel to resolve anyway. So it's simply not worth it with all the good impulse draw, with all of the reprinted Wheel of Fortunes, essentially. And then also just like if you're not mono red, like all the other colors can draw cards, right? So you can use those as well. So not worth, was it $300 now?
Yeah.
Just under, like 290-ish, yeah.
All right, Tomer, what do you got for us?
Okay, so this card, I don't know if anybody runs this card, but then I looked on EDH Rec and it sees a lot of play, and I don't know why. It's Timeless Lotus. So Timeless Lotus. Oh, wait, 1 second. Oh, loading. There we go. Timeless Lotus is a 5 mana legendary artifact. It's colorless. It enters the battlefield tapped, and you can tap it to add Wooburg. So 5 mana, 1 of each color. It's like
from Dominaria United.
Yeah, it's like the big brother of like Gilded Lotus. Gilded Lotus, for those who don't know, including me apparently, 5 mana, colorless artifact, not legendary. Doesn't enter tap, but it only adds 3 mana of any one color. This adds the same mana cost, mana value, but it's 5 mana, Wooburg, but you can't tap it the turn it comes into play, and it's a legendary. And it sees play in 15% of decks. What?
Is it a precon card?
I'm actually like wondering if EDH. I'm looking at the EDH Rec page. I'm wondering if there's a bug, because if you look at the top commanders,
it's like
Joda's number 1 at 34%, and then below that it's like 24, 22. I don't know how this can add up to 15% of all decks playing this card.
It would be 15% of decks it's legal. So it should be 15%.
15% decks is so 15% of 5 color decks.
But
which I mean, yeah, that makes sense. But like, it's so the card is worth $13 according to MTG Goldfish, which like in a 5 color deck, a 5-drop mana rock that taps for 5 is good. But also, like, you have, like, Mirari's Wake, which will be making more than that mana. Or, like, if you pay a little bit more mana, you go to Zendikar's Resurgent. Like, once you have mana rocks that are 5 or greater, you really want, like, obscene yields for it. And 5 mana for 5 is good, but, like, no, not $13. No.
I could see the argument for it in very specific decks, maybe. Like, Joda that lets you cast everything for Wooburg, like it's kind of cute there. Like Progenitus, this like 5 lands and this lets you cast your Progenitus, like in very specific decks. But this being a 5-color staple, which apparently it is this even good? Like ETB's tapped, it's 5. Do you really want to be ramping on 5 like that with something that's capped? It's not going to just go off like you said, like a mana doubler or something. I don't know. I don't think I'd spend $13 on it.
In a 5-color deck, I could see me running it. It's only $13 right now, right? Like I think that's a pretty good deal, is it not?
You get 2 of them for 1 Esper Sentinel.
Yeah, you could, and you immediately get the value off of it. Like, well, kind of. You wait a turn.
Well,
but
the next year,
you have to untap. Well, if you untap with it, it's insane, right? Like you just pay 5 mana.
Wait, so we can't pay 5 mana doubling season, untap and go off, but we can play 5 mana timeless.
That's what I mean, right? Are you actually
a little more mana
able to untap with this? If we're saying we can untap a doubling season. Why can't we untap a timeless loaded?
This is not as offensive as a doubling season, though. I think that's the thing. It sneakily will probably just go right underneath it. Whereas doubling season it's such a household name that everyone's going to immediately like want to kill it.
Well, you can also on 8 mana drop doubling season and then drop a 3-drop or something. Whereas this thing does absolutely nothing, right? You always have to.
Well, you could also untap it.
Yeah, well, you have to abuse it. Can you abuse it with Voltaic Key or stuff like that?
You can.
My guess is these decks actually abuse it, and then it becomes cracked. No, they don't abuse it.
Joda the Unifier is not like the most played deck that has it. In 34% of decks is Joda the Unifier, and Joda's not untapping it. It's a legendary.
It is legendary, so it's triggering Joda, which I'm assuming is what it's going for. Is just like it's a mana rock that cascades into something.
But I don't think it's bad, but is it like
Do you play Gilded Lotus anymore? I stopped playing Gilded Lotus.
3 mana.
It only makes 3.
But it's untapped,
and it's 3
so
of the
it costs 2-ish. Yeah,
but it costs, but you only make 3 of the same color as well.
Right, that's
well,
true.
also Mirari's Wake. Mirari's Wake, 5 mana. It's Selesnya enchantment, so you can put it in your 5-color decks, no problem. Creatures you control get +1/+1, and then all your lands tap for double mana, or tap for 1 more mana. So it does the same thing, right? It like you play it on turn 5, and then next turn you tap all your lands, and now you're making at least 5 mana, but it's going to be making more than that. And it gives your creatures a little bit of an anthem.
If there's one thing I've learned about Commander players is they really value not having to think about things. It's like
stop calling me out.
What's I can't think of the name. Chromatic, whatever, the 3 mana rock.
Chromatic Lantern.
Like that card gets way more play than it should, just because it's very nice to be like, I'm 5 color, but I don't have to think about what colors I'm tapping. All my lands do all my things. And this has a little bit of that, right? It's like it makes every color. You don't really got to think about it. You're not worrying about, if I tap this land for this, it's making that. So I wonder if some of this just like,
I have Wooburg, and then how do I spend the Wooburg? And then you look at the rest of your land,
5
like,
floating, and I spend 1 here. Yeah, I guess that's true.
I think it's like I don't know, like what's the next best thing is not as good, right? Like
Mirari's Wake, I think is better.
But, okay, that's one thing.
I play Mirari's Wake.
So Mirari's Wake has the advantage of like if you have 8 mana, you can drop it, and then the rest of your mana is doubled, and you can still do things.
Yeah,
but like 5 mana on a 5 mana rock is actually pretty decent.
It's pretty good.
I just don't like mana rocks, and I don't like hoping to untap, so I would never play this. But if you are in a play group where there's not too much removal, like you don't have to worry about your mana rocks shattering like every turn. Like you untap with this, like you're popping off, right? You're very pleased with yourself if you do this, right? So maybe,
yeah, that's true.
Like if we can untap a doubling season, why can't you untap a Timeless Lotus? Like I don't.
What about 4 more dollars, and you get Smothering Tithe? Comes out 1 turn earlier, and then it's just better, makes more mana.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, Smothering Tithe is better, right? Except if you're an artifact deck.
Unless you can untap it. If you can untap your Timeless Lotus, then you're having a good time. But yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Timeless Lotus.
Okay, maybe it's borderline.
I think I think it's still worth it. It seems like a very solid.
It's only
buy.
$13.
Only $13. Yeah,
it's one of the cheaper cards we've talked about. So I'm kind of like middle on it. I don't know if I'd run out and spend $13 on it, but it's at least it's not a $300 card or whatever. Like some
if it was
cards.
some kind of like outlandish like $30 plus, I probably wouldn't buy it. For sure.
Chains of Mistopheles. I'm changing it. Chains of Mistopheles. Overrated.
I don't even know what that does. So yes, no one does. So
all right, Krim, take us home with your last card. What do you got?
All right. So the last card I've got is one that's often always just I see it all the time in red decks, and then of course dragon decks. Makes sense in dragons. It's Ancient Copper Dragon, which is just 4 red flying 6/5. When it deals combat damage to a player, roll a d20. You create a number of treasure tokens equal to the result. And it is $55.
What?
It is $55.
It's a dragon, though.
It's a dragon. Sure, it is $55, Tomer. Like, holy...
Do you not love dragons?
I do love dragons, and I still don't want a $55 spend it on this card, right? Like, this has the upside. Yes, you get a connect, and you make some unholy amount of mana. Let's not lie here. It's in red, the colors that can give it haste. But we just got... What's the hoarding dragon from Lord of the Rings?
That one, Cavern Horde Dragon, is complete gas.
Yeah,
you can cast it for like 2 mana. It has a mana discount equal to the highest number of artifacts an opponent controls.
And then when
you connect, like, oh my god,
yeah, it's like $13. And when you connect, you make a treasure token for each artifact that player controls.
I think it's like $20.
And it has flying, trample, and haste. What?
And that card is so good, and it costs as little as 2 mana.
Yeah. So,
oh god,
like it is like half of the price.
What is it?
Depending where you look,
Cavern Dragon. It came in
Dragon.
Lord of the Rings Commander precon, the Sauron deck. Yeah, it's only $15. It's only $15.
You could literally get a playset.
I mean, pretty much a playset on a dragon kind of.
The card is actually cracked.
But the card is like, why get Ancient Copper Dragon then? Which is, I get that it's inflated because it is a mythic in a set that may not have like sold, or I guess it's sold well, but
underrated set.
Underrated set, sure, we'll call it that. But It is a mythic, and it's $55. I just can't see it being worth. Yeah, maybe your opponent has no artifact, sure, whatever. But like, I would rather that than this $55 dragon.
I mean,
Cavern Horde's not good if you don't have any artifact opponents. So
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I don't know about the like. I agree that $55 is a lot for Ancient Copper Dragon, but it's much more consistent, right? It's only 6 mana.
Remove the Cavern Horde dragon,
and
part.
it's gonna make like 10 treasures when Cavern Horde might make like 3 or 4.
It doesn't have haste.
It could make one,
right?
though.
It doesn't have haste.
But you're
itself.
red.
The other one does.
Just remove the comparison to that dragon.
Okay.
Is this a $55?
I think it's a good card, right? But
sure.
55 is at like I don't know what card is worth $55 exactly, but this is what the third most expensive card on our list or something. It's an Ancient Copper Dragon. Like,
there's so many powerful. This card is busted, and like if you can start attacking with it, you're probably going to win the game. But I wouldn't spend $55 on it. There's so many big splashy dragons that do cool things that I don't think it's really like necessary to spend $55 on this. You can buy some random old mythic dragon that like is pretty busted for $2 or whatever. So at that price, I don't think I would go for it, even though it is like a very, very strong effect. There's plenty of good replacements that are almost as powerful in like a couple of bucks.
So I'm the target audience because I love dragons. But
I love dragons.
Is it worth Tomer?
No.
I mean,
did I buy one?
Curious, what is our worth price for this?
Yeah.
Wait, okay, so I didn't buy one. I got like some booster boxes when we drafted, and the stipulation was because I owned the draft box, somebody I got to keep the cards and somebody opened it. So yeah. But yeah.
I mean, so dragons, there's kind of a dragon tax, right? Where dragons sometimes are more expensive than other creature types just because they're so popular. So I don't think it's realistic to be like, oh, this should be like $5. But like, I'd pay
20.
Maybe like, that was my gut instinct. There's also like old Gnawbones, which was from a standard set, which is when a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens. That's right around $20. So I think like 20 would probably be like a price where I would be in on this.
What about Anime Dragon?
I mean, I love that Dragon Mage. I have it. That's $1. That's $1.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's a bang for your buck, literally.
Copper Dragon, good, but too expensive. We need it to be reprinted a couple times, and there are many good dragons that you could replace in your deck. So maybe it's not as good, but they're just splashy as well, and like you kind of get the same.
But even in red decks, like I see people just jamming this outside of a dragon deck, is what I'm saying. And
fellow dragon lovers,
I mean, as long as you have haste, this card is extremely good, right? Like you got to give it haste somehow. This card is extremely good. Doesn't matter what colors you can play 5-color deck. If you had haste, I would put you could get this into play reliably. Like that's actually really good.
The D20 kind of sucks though. I mean, it's exciting, but it also like kind of sucks
because it averages out to 10, so that's good.
Yeah, but
right?
if it's like you will make 10 treasures, and I'd be like, oh my god, that's amazing. But like you can still roll like 1.
But what if you roll 20?
That part doesn't bother me.
What if you roll 20?
All, yeah.
I think the difference between 10 and 20 is like whatever. Like I just want to. I would much rather just give me 10 straight up. But
it feels like if you roll anything under like 8, I'm immediately upset.
And you're like, yeah. I worked this hard for my
$55
dragon.
Yeah.
I spent good money on this dragon. I want it to make me a lot of treasures.
It needs to make 1 treasure for each dollar, okay? So if I spend $20 on it, it's got to be a D20, okay? Critical. All right. Those are our top most expensive cards not worth the price. So let us know if you disagree. Are there any cards that we've left out? Or what your thoughts are on some of the more saucy cards. I think we've had a couple splits in here. What were our splits? Sylvan Library?
Doubling season. Esper Sentinel.
Oh, Esper Sentinel Doubling Season were the big ones.
There were a couple of big ones,
yeah. And then Grim Tutor?
Grim Tutor maybe.
Damnation.
All right, just let us know on the whole list what you disagree.
We disagree on everything. Give us your opinion.
There was very little consensus. We have fired ChatGPT. We need you in the comments to let us know which way the cards should fall. So
ChatGPT doesn't even know what format we're talking about, all right? So
All right. So with that, we'll see you all here back next week. See you, everyone.
Bye.